regarding these incidents that have happened in London recently with those individuals and that person that was killed. These kinds of incidents, as you're aware, then Islam, within the religion, the revelation, it's not something that we have been taught to do in the religion whatsoever. These types of acts that occur from these individuals, then they occur as a consequence of their complete and utter lack of understanding of the Quran and the Sunnah as it should be understood. That's why we always say the Salafi methodology is the methodology that looks at the Quran and the Sunnah and understands the Quran and the Sunnah with the understanding of the Salaf of this Ummah. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ as he taught it, and the companions as they learnt it and understood it and taught it. Not the Quran and the Sunnah as my mind understands it, or the Quran and the Sunnah as my Imam's mind understands it. That isn't our religion. Our religion is the Quran and the Sunnah upon the understanding of the Salaf of this Ummah. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, how he gave those narrations and how that those narrations were then practiced and implemented by the Sahaba. As for these individuals now, and you hear them screaming and shouting, taking an ayah from the Quran somewhere, taking a hadith from somewhere, and using that or thinking they can use that as a justification for the types of acts they engage in, then that is nonsense from their behalf. And if you study the books of the Quran and the Sunnah and the principles, then you understand that. As Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentioned in Kashf al-Shubuhat and other places, one of the ways of Ahlul Bid'ah, one of the ways of these deviated groups and these deviated individuals is that they do not have a holistic understanding of the Quran and the Sunnah. They don't have a comprehensive understanding where they put together the texts and get the correct understanding. Instead, they'll have a few ayat from over here, a few hadith from over there, and then from those few ayat and hadith, they build their whole methodology upon it. So for these takfiris, these khawarij, and this is where their mentality comes from. The al-Muhajirun, the Hizb al-Tahrir, all of these types of individuals, they have that mentality which emanates, its source is from that khawarij type of thinking, that khariji type of thinking, that takfiri type of thinking. This thinking that even the Muslims, you can kill them and it's all in the path of jihad as they claim. All of these types of activities, it is their misguidance and their lack of understanding of the Quran and the Sunnah. Islam does not promote or support that in any way. In fact, we deplore these acts. They are deplorable acts and we say that they are. And we speak against these types of acts. And that is what every person should be clearly be able to say. Nobody should be shy to say that these acts are haram. What occurred in London is haram. What those individuals did is impermissible. There's nothing to be shy about or to hesitate over. It is impermissible and it is haram in Islam for those individuals to have done what they did. But they are led astray by this type of mentality which comes from the takfiris, that comes from the khawarij. You have those individuals now, Awlaki who passed away, Anwar al-Awlaki. This individual he passed away now. Some others, they are still alive now. This Abu Hamza and Umar Bakri and these Abu Qatada, all of them have this type of mentality, this type of ideology, which these people are brainwashed by. This ideology, the Muslims, we have to go do jihad. How do you do jihad? What's jihad? They haven't got a clue. We just have to do it. Do what? They don't know anything about Islam. They don't know anything about the principles. They don't know anything about the Quran and the Sunnah. They memorize this one word jihad. If you ask them what does it even mean, they don't know. And this is what they used to do. And this is what they're about. They used to scream and shout before some of them. We have to go and do jihad here. We have to go and do jihad in this place and that place. You say to them, how are you going to go do jihad? What are you going to do? You're 18 years old, you're 19 years old. How are you going to do jihad? What are you going to do? Pick up the chair from your home and go fight with that? These people, they have no sense. It's emotions that overrides their intellect, or overrides rather the Quran and the Sunnah. The religion is not based upon our emotions. Not to bring about these types of arguments. This is happening to the Muslims, therefore we have to do that. That is not a legitimate way of reasoning in Islam. These people now, especially this one, Anwar al-Awlaki and these likes, they have lectures in English and in Arabic. And many of the people, they are confused by them. Many of the people, the youth, etc., they listen to them. you should warn clearly and openly every individual in your family, in your society, to stay away from the likes of those individuals. Stay away from listening to the tapes of al-Awlaki. Staying away from listening to the tapes of these other individuals. Qatada, Abu Qatada, the likes of them. They have a diseased mentality. This Anwar al-Awlaki, they said to him once, when he was alive, maybe I mentioned this before, that time when the individual tried to do the bombing on the aeroplane with the powder in his underpants. He became known as the underpants bomber. That individual, he managed to sneak some powder, some explosive powder in his underpants onto an aeroplane. And the aeroplane was in America, I think. And he was about to land. And he tried to blow up this powder, this explosive powder. He got a match or whatever it was, but it didn't blow up. He didn't manage to do it. So they caught him. Afterwards they said to al-Awlaki, and it's available, recorded with him sitting there talking. An interviewer says to him, what do you think about that? This thing that happened recently, this was a couple of years ago, 3-4 years ago, I don't remember when. What do you think about this individual? He said, yes, I'm proud of him. This individual was one of my students. I'm proud of him. So then the interviewer said, all of this paraphrased, but it's there available for you to see. The interviewer says to him something to the effect, how is that something to be proud of? How is this act of his to go and take down a plane, kill all these people, innocents on board? Maybe there were children on board, a baby of 6 months old maybe. What did he do? How is that so-called jihad as you claim? Killing an innocent 6-month-old baby, 8-month-old, 1 year, 2 years. Muslims may be on board. What jihad is it if you're killing Muslims as you claim? What is all of this nonsense that you're upon? How is this something to be proud of? Listen to his answer. It's available, it's on the YouTube, internet, wherever. He says, well, the reality is the world we live in right now, we can't get to the infidels or whatever they call them. We can't get to the American bases. We can't get to the soldiers. We can't get to those people. It's too heavily fortified. We can't attack them. We can't kill them. This is the reality. So what do? We have to do something. So we'll take down the easy targets of airplanes and things. We have to get revenge somehow. We have to attack them somehow. We can't get to the bases. We can't get in the military camps. We can't get anywhere near there. Go within 100 meters and you'll be killed. We can't get in there. So we'll do these types of things. Blow up an airplane here and there. Blow up a cafe here and there. Blow up a bus. Blow up a train. This was his own response. Now anybody who listens to that, then you tell us if that is something permissible or if that is a correct answer. Even those individuals who say, Awlaki is from Ahlul Sunnah. He's a Sunni, he's this, he's that. Him and all of those people upon that mentality. Him, Bin Laden, whoever it might be. They claim that they were good people and they were striving for Islam and they were protecting Islam and they were defending Islam. Absolute nonsense. How does that response of his, how is that a defense of Islam? We can't get to the actual soldiers, etc. So what can we do? We'll just have to blow up a plane. MashaAllah. This man is supposed to be a scholar. This man is not a scholar. He is not learned at all. He is a foolish individual, and all of the likes of his mentality are foolish individuals who misguide the people upon this takfiri khariji mentality. Look at what Sheikh Muhammad bin Salih al-Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala said. This is the words of Sheikh Muhammad bin Salih al-Uthaymeen rahimahullah regarding these events, regarding going and blowing up some cafe or blowing up some plane or the likes of what you saw in London the other day. He says, الآن الدين الإسلامي عند الكفار هل بلغ عامتهم على وجه غير مشوش? He says, now all of these kuffar out there, have all of them received Islam in a non-distorted way? Or is it the case that they are receiving Islam now in a distorted way? What occurs to the impression of Islam when these fools, they engage in this foolishness? What does it do to the image of Islam? An image that Islam is completely innocent of and free of. So the Shaykh said, do the kuffar now, those who are disbelievers, they're not Muslims, what kind of impression do you think they get of Islam when these foolish individuals go and do these types of acts? La abadan, he says, never. Don't try and tell me they are getting the right picture of Islam. This type of act does not give you the correct picture of Islam whatsoever. Islam is innocent of this act in its complete total form. وَلَمَّا ظَهَرَتْ قَضِيَّةُ الْإِخْوَانِ The Shaykh says, when these Ikhwanis came about, الَّذِينَ يَتَصَرَّفُونَ بِغَيْرِ حِكْمَةٍ These individuals who then behave in a manner that has no wisdom in it. لما ظهرت قضية الإخوان الذين يتصرفون بغير حكمة When these Ikhwanis they came about, the ones who act without any wisdom in anything, ازدادوا تشويه الإسلام or ازداد تشويه الإسلام. Then this distortion of the image of Islam became even greater. To those people who aren't Muslims, the distortion of the image of the correct Islam, the pure Islam, it became even more distorted by the acts of these foolish individuals. He says, ازداد تشويه الإسلام في نظر الغربيين وغير الغربيين. So the people in the West, those who aren't Muslims, they then perceive Islam in an even worse way. Whether they're in the West or in other than the West. Wherever in the world. Anybody who isn't Muslim and he sees these types of activities occurring from individuals who are supposedly doing them in the name of Islam, then that only distorts the image of Islam from its reality. It takes it away into this nonsense and foolishness that is actually nothing to do with Islam. أعني بهم, the Shaykh says, the ones I'm talking about, أولئك الذين يلقون المتفجرات في صفوف الناس زعما منهم أن هذا الجهاد في سبيل الله. He says, I'm talking about those types of people who will go and throw a bomb amongst the people in the cafe, in the bus, in the plane, wherever it might be. They go and throw a bomb there, claiming that this is apparently jihad in the path of Allah. Claiming that this is apparently jihad. And the Shaykh is making a nonsense of their statement, that this is jihad. This is the furthest you could get from jihad. That is not jihad for an individual to go and blow up a cafe or a bus or a train or to kill other innocents, or to the extent they go, they'll say, well, even if Muslims die, collateral damage, they'll get Jannah, whatever. This is the level of delusion they have in their minds. The level of delusion, the delusional state that their minds have got to is to that level. And this is what those takfiris, kharijis promote. Then the Shaykh says, وَالْحَقِيقَةِ أَنَّهُمْ أَسَاءُوا إِلَى الْإِسْلَامِ The reality is, they have done an evil act against Islam. They have done evil towards Islam. فَمَاذَا أَنْتَجَ هَؤُلَاءِ He says, what have these individuals brought us? What are the results? What results have they brought for Islam? They go and bomb a plane somewhere. What result does that give to Islam? They go and blow up a cafe somewhere. They go and do the killing in London. What result does that bring to Islam? He says, then the Shaykh says, أسألكم هل أقبل الكفار على الإسلام أو ازدادوا نفرة منه. He says, these acts that the Muslims they do, or some of these deviated, misguided, delusional individuals do, the Shaykh says, I ask you, do you think that the people who are not Muslims are going to start coming towards Islam and accepting Islam when they see that? Or are they going to increase in running away from it and thinking that it's bad, etc., etc.? He says, I ask you that question. What do you think the answer to that is? وَأَهْلُ الْإِسْلَامِ يَكَادُ الْإِنسَانُ يُغَطِّي وَجْهَهُ لِأَلَّا يُنْسَبِ إِلَى هَذِهِ الطَّائِفَةِ. He says, maybe even a person, he wants to cover himself up. The Muslims want to cover themselves up because they don't want to be associated to this absolute nonsense from these individuals with their deluded minds. You want to free yourself from that nonsense. وَالْإِسْلَامُ بَرِيءٌ مِنْهَا. The Shaykh says Islam is completely innocent of these types of acts. Imagine this, he says, حَتَّى بَعْدَ أَنْ فُرِضَ الْجِهَادِ Even after jihad was legislated in the correct and proper form. And that is something that is a great topic that needs to be understood. So much is the misconception. And these takfiris, they abuse that. They'll say jihad, jihad. And they haven't got a clue what they're talking about. Their atrocities that they commit them in the name of jihad. And Islam is innocent of their claims. The Shaykh says, even after that, ما كان الصحابة يذهبون إلى مجتمع الكفار يقتلونهم أبدا. He says the companions didn't used to go to societies where non-Muslims live and just go kill, just randomly go and kill somebody, just randomly go and start killing and murdering. They didn't used to do that. Where have these people learnt this methodology? That's what you do. Go to a society where there are non-Muslims and start killing. He says the companions didn't do this. This isn't the methodology of Islam. أما هذا الإرهاب فهو والله نقص على المسلمين. He says, as for this type of terrorism or whatever you want to call it, this type of activity that they engage in, then it is, he says, by Allah, a deficiency upon the Muslims. أقسم بالله, he says. He says, I take an oath, I swear by Allah. This is an absolute deficiency. It's a weakness, a deficiency, an absolute nonsense, foolishness, delusional behavior from those individuals. The Shaykh's word was naqs. The remainder is addition. لأننا نجد نتائجه ما في نتيجة. He said, we see the results of that. When these people engage in these foolish acts, we see the results of it. Then he says, ما في نتيجة. He says the results of it are that there is no result. What result are you going to gain from doing an act like that? He says there are no results to that. أبدا. بل هو بالعكس. He says it's actually the opposite. You don't get any good result out of doing this type of act. You get the opposite. فيه تشويه السمعة. You have a distorted view and perception that goes around. A distorted view and perception that goes around amongst the people that Muslims are this and Islam is that. This distorted and deviated perception then goes around, which becomes widespread, and that's what becomes known to the people, due to the act of one or two of the foolish, deluded individuals. وَلَوْ أَنَّنَا سَلَكْنَا الْحِكْمَةِ فَاتَّقَيْنَا اللَّهَ فِي أَنفُسِنَا وَأَصْلَحْنَا أَوَّلًا أو أصلحنا أنفسنا أولا ثم حاولنا إصلاح غيرنا بالطرق الشرعية لكان نتيجة طيبة. The Shaykh says, if only we behaved in a proper manner, whereby we look to our own selves and start to rectify our own selves, then we begin to go out and rectify the other people in the correct Islamic manner. Rectify your own selves first, then look to the others to go and rectify them in the correct Islamic manner. These individuals now who scream and shout, the disbelievers are doing this and the Muslims are being attacked. They themselves, if you look at them and their families, they themselves, you look at how much they are practicing, and it's virtually non-existent. Their practicing of Islam is deficient in of itself. Their enthusiasm is only an emotion. It's only an emotion, a heightened emotion, anger, rage, whatever the emotion is, and their lack of understanding of the Quran and the Sunnah in its proper way. So they go out and they commit these types of acts under their delusional state, not understanding that the Quran and the Sunnah has stated ways of behaving, stated what's halal and what's haram. They have no significance. They give no significance to any of that. No importance to any of that. These individuals now who committed the act in London, what importance or significance did they give to any of the rulings in Islam? They went against all of those rulings of Islam and they committed this act that was haram. And then they attempt in the audacity to justify that with ayat of the Quran, or with examples of what's occurring here and there. With regards to what's occurring with other places across the world, no doubt there are places in countries where Muslims are oppressed. That doesn't mean in any way, shape or form that an individual then takes the law into his own hands, as they say, the expression that they have. In that instance, when you see that Muslims are oppressed, then the first thing that you should do, or one of the first things that you should do, is to look at your own state. Why is it that the Muslims are in a weak state now? Compared to the Salaf, how they were in their strength. Compare the numbers of the Salaf to how many numbers of Muslims there are now. The numbers of how many there were at that time compared to what there are now. 1 billion or whatever they say the figures. But why is there weakness now? And when there was only a few 100,000 in those days, there was so much honor and strength. Because they were practicing their religion properly. They were giving the rights of the people as they should be given. Giving the rights of their neighbors, even if it was a Jew or a Christian. Giving the rights that Islam has said you give in the appropriate manner. There is no injustice. They even mention a narration that there was a dispute between a Jewish man and a Muslim on one occasion. And they both argued over this issue and they wanted a third party to judge between them. They mention in the narration that the Jewish individual, he chose who? the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. In one narration it's mentioned, he says that the Jewish individual, he said to the Muslim man, I want to take this dispute to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Why? Because he knew the Jewish individual who wasn't even Muslim wanted to take it to the Prophet Muhammad because he knew that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would not rule against him unjustly. He would not do injustice. If it was his right, then he knew the Prophet ﷺ would give it to him. He wouldn't just give it in the favor of the Muslim because he was Muslim. He knew of the justice of Islam. And if the people, they understood and they practiced this properly, then you would see the correct image of Islam portrayed. But as for now, these individuals, this minority who are deviated by the likes of those individuals, then you should openly, without hesitation, warn the people from listening to their cassettes, going onto the YouTube and listening to their videos, whatever it may be, lest they become affected by the disease of these Kharijis and Takfiris, and they end up in this delusional state, whereby they think they can go with knives onto the streets and start cutting people. So be warned from that. Protect yourselves and protect your families from this deviation of these people. Warn against them and bring the people away from them in order that they are wiped out. These individuals and their methodology, in order that it no longer exists. The methodology of the Takfiris and the Kharijis, warn against it openly and clearly and protect your families from it. Because Islam is free of those acts and Islam does not condone those acts in any way, rather it condemns them fully. So you should be aware of that and not hesitate to say that. And we'll conclude upon that point for now. We'll continue in 2 weeks' time. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.